Welcome to MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Eckman, and I'm joined by Bill Leon.
Hello.
And our presence may be graced by Bill Arsenault.
He'll be here. I know he. It's just he was taking a little long, but
which that has been known to happen from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of things to cover, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. We've got a host of movies, and the first one that I'd like to get into is Hunger Games: Mockingjay, Part 2. That's a lot of words. So, now I know, Bill, you haven't seen it yet, correct?
No, but the only movie in that franchise I'm super familiar with is the first one.
The first one, I remember seeing it in theaters, and I had no thoughts, no expectations on it.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew that it was based on this popular franchise, and I knew that my sister-in-law wanted to go see it, and she invited me to go with her and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, at the time, they were still dating. They hadn't even married yet.
Mm-hmm.
But so I went with them, and I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised by it, because what I got was sort of a movie that kind of was a throwback to like 70s science fiction films, where you had, the troopers in those weird white outfits. You had kind of a novel concept, Logan's Run kind of, young people focused concept.
Mm-hmm.
It really, the uniqueness of it really got to me. I liked the thing of, the teenagers being forced to essentially contend in gladiatorial combat. That was something that intrigued me. And of course, this is a metaphor that's not lost on the film, in that so many of the adult characters, particularly the characters who live in the, quote, capital, have names that are based on Roman and Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
Or in fact, like actual history. And that's something that, fascinated me. And Catching Fire, the sequel, was kind of more of the same, but the writing was a little sharper and the direction was better. It didn't have shaky cam. That was a major problem, I thought, with the first film. And, technically, it was hard to tell what was going on.
Well, that's okay. So when I saw the first film, everyone I saw it with was like, yeah, I really love the second half, the Hunger Games part, the shaky cam half. And I was like, what about that build-up? What about that satirical society? And I was like, that's what I had more fun with.
And that's actually, Catching Fire begins with a lot of that stuff too. And once again, that's my favorite part of it, is the satirical element of these people being forced to essentially go on So You Think You Can Dance kind of reality shows.
That element, and I heard it. Did you hear about that aspect of it before you saw the film? Because I had, because it is an element of the books.
When I saw the commercials, it kind of hinted at it, and that's what piqued my interest, and why I said, you know what, I'll give this a shot. Mm-hmm. And also, my sister-in-law is someone who has an interesting taste in movies, so I thought, you know what, I'll give. It seems like something that could be worth looking into, and so that's what piqued my interest with it. And then when Mockingjay Part 1 came out, I think at that point there was a degree of a letdown, because it was when I finally realized that this whole trend of splitting a book in two is literally is done just to milk one more movie ticket out of people. And Mockingjay Part 1 had some great moments in it, but it's not a movie. It's half of a movie. And Mockingjay Part 2 is the second half of a movie. And as a single film, it has some good moments, but it doesn't coalesce. And it also, oddly enough, even if they had done this better, perhaps.
You seem frustrated.
Okay, here's what bugs me about it. It's kind of a paradox in that it both feels like it rushed to a climax, and yet shouldn't have been split up. How weird is that? It's so if the film had been if both part 1 and part 2 were together, we'd be looking at like a 3.5 hour movie. No, more than that. Shit, we'd be looking at a 4-hour movie plus.
Oh my God! Didn't they do that with The Hobbit too? The Battle of the Five Armies, was that 2 movies?
No, Battle of Five Armies. No, The Hobbit itself was split into 3 movies.
Yeah, I know, but weren't they talking about making the last one 2 movies? Maybe I'm just remembering that.
What wrong. I remember was originally it was going to be 2 movies, and then at like the 11th hour, they announced it was going to be 3 movies.
Right. Okay. Wow.
So, either way, I mean, that works perfectly well as one movie. You don't have to turn The Hobbit. I think the regular version of the novel is like 200 pages long.
There's going to be a fan edit.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I would like to see that. Ultimately, my problem I have with Mockingjay Part 2 is there are a lot of disconnected scenes which individually are interesting. Like there's a scene where the characters are in the city and they're chasing down. They're in the city and they're chased down into the underground of the city, and there are these monster like creepy zombie like characters that are stalking them in the dark.
Are we talking about Far From the Madding Crowd?
Yes, of course I am.
Okay.
Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, Bill A. So yeah,
Bill A has joined us, by the way.
Yes, he has.
Yeah. Got here a little late, but I'm alright.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have that much more. Did you see Mockingjay Part 2, Bill?
Yeah, I had to see it for a review for a magazine.
I'm curious to have you... I'm having trouble saying anything about this movie. I'm just so nonplussed.
How much of this series have you seen, Bill?
I've seen none of them.
You've seen none of them? Okay.
Oh, wow.
See, yeah, I asked... and Ken was like, no, you need to see the first one or you're going to be confused. So let's hear about this.
Well, you know, I wasn't really confused. I knew the basic premise. Mm-hmm. You know, Pan Am is like a fractured America or something, and and in the future, and there's different districts, and they take kids.
2000.
Right, they take different kids from different districts to fight in some game to rally the people together or to keep them under control or something, and then Katniss becomes unexpectedly this new savior type character. So I was like, okay, I guess I get the premise. And Mockingjay Part 2 didn't do a horrible job in terms of establishing things. You know, it in the first few minutes it established who our main characters were, why they're there, and what's going on. And it did it okay. You know, it did that fairly well, so I wasn't really confused going into this movie.
Okay.
My only problem with the movie, and really the movie's well made, it's rather well done, it lacks a certain energy to it, a certain tension. Like, the finale is completely without suspense.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It just kind of happens.
And I totally called everything that was going to happen in that finale.
Well, I knew what was going to happen. I read the spoilers for the book like a couple of years ago. Just doing research on it, just general research, and I was like, oh yeah, this is going to happen, right? And then I was like, I wonder if they're going to do that in the movie. Then of course in the movie, you know, that thing happens, and it wasn't a surprise to me, but I was kind of like, they didn't really build it up, did they? They just kind of hinted that she had problems with this person, and but the problems were pretty mild. They weren't like extreme.
Well, in the last film, they do set up the sort of a power grab might be coming, and I'm gonna go ahead and just warn in advance, if you haven't seen the movie yet, you might want to fast forward ahead a little bit.
Oh, we're gonna spoil it? Okay.
Yeah. So basically, Bill Leon, do you care if I spoil this for you?
No.
Right.
I may never see this ever.
All right, so in Mockingjay Part 1, they introduced District 13, which everyone thought prior to that had been destroyed and was no longer in existence. And in reality, District 13 broke off from the rest of the districts and the capital, and is now its own little self-sustained nation of sorts. And their primary...
I want to ask a really stupid fucking question.
All right.
As somebody that has seen all of these movies, how much do they try to not say District 9 because District 9 is a movie?
That's a stupid question, but
I said it was a stupid question.
Come to think of it, I don't know if I don't think they've
ever referenced it. Yeah.
Yeah, but throughout all of the movies, I don't think they ever say District 9.
I think it's just assumed that there's a District 9.
There is, and it is. I think it does get some mention in the books, but yeah, like I think that was a strategic decision because District 9 is already a movie.
Well, isn't District 13 a movie?
District B13, it's like a French parkour action movie.
Yeah. Parkour.
Yeah,
I know what that is, but it's why make that a movie? Continue.
Because they need to make movies off of things.
Because parkour is like the French sport that has come about recently. It's like it's their new thing.
It's a sport.
Yeah, they consider it a sport. I consider it a way to shoot an action scene
in an exciting manner, but it's kind of. I don't know. What
they said is, let's take these brief moments where Jackie Chan scales like the side of a wall, and let's extend that into a whole like sequence.
City. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
so District 13 is revealed.
District 13 is revealed, and Katniss is taken in by District 13, and in Mockingjay Part 1, they kind of groom her to be their propaganda mascot, where she sort of becomes the ersatz face of the rebellion.
Yeah.
And then in Mockingjay Part 2, she basically gives up on the whole concept of propaganda and decides that she wants to take it. She wants to actually take active participation in the war, which she can't quite get away from. So the propaganda, they end up sticking her in a frontline unit, but that unit, their entire purpose is to shoot propaganda videos. And so she fights her way through the streets, and finally, her and her unit does in fact make it to the front line, and they see. And there's an explosion that occurs, and a lot of civilians are killed.
Which is actually a pretty devastating sequence. That's probably the only part in the movie I was invested in.
Right, and you see briefly that Katniss's own sister is a medic in the crowd of people who's killed, and so you watch as she sees her sister die, and her sister was the whole reason she got into the Hunger Games to begin with. So
yeah.
That was the moment that's supposed to be really dramatic, and it is.
One of Jennifer Lawrence's finest acting moments.
The one problem is they barely set up the fact that medics are going to be in the area at the beginning of the movie. It's like a tossed-off line, and then suddenly she just appears. There should have been a little bit more build-up to it, I think. It just it feels like it was written in as like a plot twist.
Yeah.
So anyway, she wakes up in a hospital, recovering from her wounds, and she finds out that the rebellion has finally prevailed, and the president, played by Donald Sutherland, President Snow, is now under arrest, and they're planning to execute him. Katniss briefly talks with Snow, and Snow kind of rubs it in her face, saying that the leader of the rebellion is... I forget her name.
Julianne Moore?
Yes, Julianne Moore, who plays President Alma Coin. The leader of the rebellion is just going to replace me. He says that she's also going to be a tyrant, so to speak.
And that she ordered the explosion strike.
Yeah, exactly, and that she ordered the explosion to make it look like to make it look like the.
Snow was attacking the civilians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Katniss pretty much believes this without doing any more digging into it, which turns out to be true, you think, but you never really get to know for sure. All you know is, yes, Alma Coin is certainly turning into kind of a fascist figure. She announces that there's going to be a new symbolic Hunger Games with capital citizens taking part, and she tells Katniss that Katniss gets to execute President Snow herself. And so there's this big to-do of this big ceremony. Katniss gets, pulls the arrow out and starts pointing it at Snow, while President Coin delivers this rousing speech. And then Katniss, at the last moment, moves her bow up and shoots President Coin instead of President Snow.
And then the people end up executing Snow, basically almost devouring him. Really.
Well, Mussolini style, the citizens of the rebellion basically all rush in on Snow, and presumably he's torn to shreds. Body parts everywhere. They don't show it, but you hear kind of some screams that make you think, this is not going to end well for him. But this scene, the one thing that was effective about that scene, in my opinion, was Donald Sutherland's acting choice, because he thinks he's about to be executed, and when he finds out that Katniss instead decides to kill the president that was going to replace him, his face goes from terror to him laughing like a jackal, just laughing his ass off, and the laughter turns to horror when he starts getting pulled to pieces.
That's the thing about that scene. I don't think he ever was in terror. I think he was constantly amused by the fact that Katniss was in this predicament.
Mm-hmm.
It starts off with him smiling, and it ends with him smiling.
I guess, maybe not terror, so to speak, at the beginning. Yeah. I think he just knows that he's going to die, and there is a mild sense of him. He just thinks that. We'll say this: his smugness turns to delight because he realizes that Katniss once again surprised him.
Mm.
She found a way to surprise him. He thought that she was going to be the dumb girl who let all this power slip away, and just to create another empire. When in reality, Katniss actually did make a decision that would benefit mankind, so to speak, I guess. But if Donald Sutherland's acting choice of just bursting out into insane laughter worked for me. I liked that scene.
What that reminded me of was this Bernardo Bertolucci film, 1900. Mm-hmm. At the end, near the end of that film, Donald Sutherland's character in that movie gets killed by a crowd of people, and in that scene, he's also laughing very hard.
Maybe that was meant to be a...
Yeah, that's a weird parallel.
Yeah, that's a weird movie, too. I mean, it's a good movie, but it's also, it's got a lot of, there's this scene where they're throwing manure at Donald Sutherland, but the manure is fresh out of the asses of cows.
Oh, wow.
And they're literally rubbing the anuses to get the poo out, and they get it out, and they throw it at him.
This isn't something that happened on South Park?
No, this is a real movie. Bertolucci's 1900, yeah.
Yeah, Bertolucci's kind of a weirdo.
No, yeah.
I mean, you can't say that he's
He is. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, which is already a mouthful right there. I mean,
oh god, what is a Mockingjay?
It's like a bird, right?
Yeah. Okay. It's funny because they barely reference it in the first movie, and I guess in the book they go into a lot of detail that. The Capitol is very good at genetic modification of animals, and I guess the mockingjay is a bird that was bred. It was originally supposed to be bred to be a bird that would that would be able to mimic the voices of.
This is not mentioned once in that first movie.
Well, no, it's offhanded.
Is it
that the mockingjay mimics voices?
Oh, okay.
Which I guess makes sense related.
And what happens is the mockingjay, instead of mimicking voices, it ends up mimicking sound. So, if you whistle or you sing, they will mimic the song that you're making.
Yeah.
And I don't know what all goes into it, but I guess it's supposed to carry across thousands of miles. And so there's something to do with spying or something involved.
Well, I think it's supposed to relate to Katniss, like she becomes the voice of millions or something, you know.
Right, yeah. So there's
something like that. So it's supposed to be thematic like that. That was the one thing I kind of liked about the finale was Katniss's decision. You know, she was kind of like faced with being selfish or being righteous, you know, or selfless. And she ended up being selfless. She kills Coin and lets the people kill Snow. And that ends up, you know, reverberating and becoming a good decision ultimately. But my problem with it was, like I said earlier, it had no energy to it.
Yeah.
It was just, she comes out and does this, and it really needed to have been filled with heavy tension.
Part of what made the first two Hunger Games movies intriguing to me was the way the horror of reality was intercut with these satirical moments of like Stanley Tucci being, you know, this reality TV show host who, and, you know, talking to people about horrifying things but treating it like it was, you know, MTV.
That was great.
Which is what MTV does in reality.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. But you know, this takes it to an even further.
Right, it's more exaggerated, right?
And you know, God loves the Tooch. Stanley Tucci's just...
He's wonderful. He really is.
And the problem is, in this movie, he's barely in it. There's like 2 or 3 video scenes where he's like talking to the camera.
Oh.
I think there should have been more of that propaganda stuff. And it's worth... Well, if you want to go into the Roman metaphor of it, when the Roman Empire was starting to fall apart, numerous emperors would institute more and more elaborate games in order to try to distract the people from the fact that their lands are slowly being eroded by barbarians. And so I would have liked to have seen them step up the propaganda in a bigger, crazier way, where, you know, suddenly maybe they don't have so many citizens they can put in the Hunger Games, so instead they have, you know, whatever prisoners of war they have, they throw into, you know, a pit and make them fight each other to the death right there, and, you know, stuff like that. I would have liked to have seen like an increasing level of craziness. Like at the peak of the Roman Empire, the Colosseum in Italy was designed. It was designed so well and so watertight. You could actually have naval battles. They would fill the Colosseum with water, and they would put ships in the Colosseum, and the ships would actually fight each other for people's amusement. And that was just them, you know, that was them blowing all of their funds and all of their money into satisfying the urge of the people. And I would have been intrigued by that, seeing the people of the capital becoming more and more vapid and less concerned about the reality of their situation.
Where the opposite really ended up happening, where they actually were, you know, a little worried. At least the citizens were. I mean, they were doing food lines, I think, or well, not food lines. They were rushing to the Capitol building, right?
Right.
They were like refugees, and
Oh, by the way, what was the deal with the cat lady? That was never set up in any of the other movies.
That was kind of weird, yeah. But I was like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
This movie has mutants in it for some reason. Like it
looked
whatever.
like clearly like a plastic surgery thing where
that's what I got out of it.
Which I can understand. You know, they've gotten so vapid that they're making themselves look like animals because, you know, it's cool. All right, so some Island of Dr. Moreau territory there.
Yeah, except Island of Dr. Moreau did it so much better. Better being a relative word, of course.
Yeah, better.
Better, yes. But no, did anyone feel kind of weird with the refugee stuff? You know, how Katniss and Liam Hemsworth were going to hide amongst the refugees in order to assassinate Snow, and how currently there's this fear in America of Syrian refugees coming over and doing some terrorist acts. I mean, did anyone feel kind of like
that's just weird timing?
I can definitely see the parallel you're drawing there, but I think that's a complete coincidence.
I agree.
That's probably something from the book, which was written years ago.
Oh yeah, the book was written a long time ago. So yeah, that's not.
Yeah, I mean, I felt it was a coincidence too, but at the same time, I couldn't help but think, asshole conservatives are gonna take this and expand upon it and
Right.
be like Hunger Games knows the score, they know what's up,
That's not the first.
Well, I would love to see them make that argument because my response to that would be, so you are using a piece of tween fiction to
Right.
to push your agenda. I mean, don't get me wrong, Hunger Games, I'm sure the books are like really good, but we're not exactly talking George Orwell here.
No, I mean
This is an Animal Farm.
The thematic elements in the Hunger Games series is pretty blunt. Like they bluntly describe how you're supposed to feel and what is going on. There's there's very little subtlety, but the bluntness is handled rather well, though. I mean, it's well crafted. There's lore to it. There's mythology. There's all this stuff. So you kind of forgive it for being a little heavy.
I think I will sum things up in my own mind by saying that overall, I mean, I enjoyed the first two Hunger Games films, and Mockingjay, for all intents and purposes, Part 1 and 2 are one 4-hour movie. It at least ends the series.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well, let me ask you.
I wasn't emotionally invested in it, but it at least didn't piss me off either. So.
Okay, let me ask you, as a piece of tween fiction, as you called it earlier, which it is, do you think the love story wrapped up, the love triangle wrapped up rather well, or?
Oh, it wrapped up conveniently.
It wrapped up
because conveniently at the last moment you found out that Liam Hemsworth knew more than he was letting on about coin and stuff, and so she's like, "Oh, okay, well then I'll choose PETA." Cool.
Okay, I went to the Hunger Games wiki and I looked up District 9.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, what is it?
District 9 is the least spoken about district in the Hunger Games series.
No shit.
There is no named person from District 9 in the books or the films. There's a bunch of facts about it, but yeah,
so,
those are...
let me just ask you, because each district has the thing that they specialize in. What does District 9 specialize in? Please tell me it's cute South African accents.
It is responsible for grain. It is mentioned that District 9 has many factories, most likely for grain processing. The following jobs are offered in District 9: cropper, farmer, plower, sower, and harvester.
Oh.
Oh, okay, so it's the fucking Midwest.
There you go.
Yeah, I can literally walk 100 yards this way, and I will be in a farm field. So
You'll hit a silo. Yeah.
I'm a little disappointed they don't mention the film District 9, but whatever.
I almost said cyclo when I said silo. I was like, that's a totally different thing.
Meet the cyclos. Yeah. Fort Knox is Kentucky. Kentucky's not technically the Midwest. That's kind of the South. So.
To Battlefield Earth. I'd rather talk about Battlefield Earth. Can we talk about Battlefield Earth?
We kind of have already.
Yeah,
we got too much other shit.
We have to. Yeah. Bill, I'm going to jump over. We'll get to Jessica Jones a little bit later because I'm sure you're going to have a lot to talk about with that. I want to quickly run through a couple of movies that I saw. Now, Bill Arsenault, did you see Spotlight or Brooklyn?
I haven't seen Spotlight or Brooklyn, although I did just recently get a DVD award screener for Brooklyn, so I have no reason to not see it.
All right, I will avoid spoilers with Brooklyn. I'll cover that just as loosely.
But I did see Trumbo.
We'll get into Trumbo in a bit because I know we might have a little bit of a debate to start with. That.
Oh right, yeah, okay.
Perhaps we'll see. Pardon me.
Sure.
So Brooklyn is based on a novel by, I think it's pronounced Colm Tolbin. The one problem with Irish names is they never seem to be pronounced the way they're written. Like
Tolbin.
I learned just today that it's not Saoirse Ronan. It's Saoirse, I think it's pronounced.
That's really weird.
Saoirse Ronan. I'm pretty sure. I'm probably getting that fucking wrong.
Xerxes Ronan?
Yeah, Saoirse. Which Saoirse sounds like a name. It's just spelled Saoirse, which whatever. So the movie stars Saoirse Ronan, and the movie is about a young lady who lives in Ireland, and she kind of longs for a better life. She has a shitty job in a small-town shop, no real prospects. Her sister is an accountant and is doing pretty well for herself, and so her sister kind of... her sister knows a contact in America, a priest, who kind of bankrolls her to the U.S., and the priest sets her up with a job at a big city, New York department store, and sets her up with a place to live, some lodging in a boarding house, and sort of, just a new start. And she falls in love with a American boy. And then, and this isn't giving away anything because this is in the trailer too, something happens that causes her to need to come back to Ireland, and while returning to Ireland, she meets and starts to sort of feel feelings for a Irish boy.
Donald Gleason.
Yes, Donald Gleason. And so from there, it's the classical romantic drama triangle where she needs to make the decision, not unlike Hunger Games, but without killing each other.
Without the mutants and the violence and the... Yeah, right. Donald Sutherland laughing, yeah.
So, Brooklyn, I don't really have that much to say about the plot, because the plot I've just pretty much explained, and you can, how it develops is your own prerogative to find out. But it's a beautifully shot movie. It's got a very tight script and some very clever dialogue that I think really sets up the experience of a Irish immigrant in America in the 1950s and how that would have broken down. And I like every performer in the movie really kind of hits their marks the way they need to, and you feel invested in her life and her relationships. And when she's starting to make decisions that you disagree with, you feel that feeling of, of investment in her future, which is something that's hard to... Another thing that's worth noting, because I'm going to get to Spotlight in a little bit, unlike Spotlight, this movie actually has a positive priest character who is not depicted with any negative traits. He's just, he's
a pretty honest guy.
Played by Jim Broadbent, and Jim Broadbent is nothing if not an earnest actor. Gotta love him.
Well, he could play a bad guy too. I mean,
he can do a good bad guy, but
he did it in Harry Potter.
Yeah, he can do that. But when he plays a good guy, he is a good guy. Yeah, he's got that aw shucks kind of personality about him that you can really.
I think part of it has to do with his hair. His hair just looks wildy and curly, and it's like he looks like he just woke up.
I own a chocolate factory.
Right. So there you go.
So yeah, it's, what I would say. This is a wonderfully solid romantic drama. I said this about Far From the Madding Crowd. You referenced that earlier this year. In that it's just a solid romantic drama. It doesn't really surprise you in any ways, but the performances, the cinematography, everything about it is just plain solid. And I would recommend it if that is the kind of film you're in the mood to see.
Okay, would you say this is an awards contender?
I think that there's definitely a chance of some acting Oscars. I think the movie is a little too... There's nothing about it that is going to get it a Best Picture win. It may squeeze in a nomination, especially now with those, that 10 movies get nominated these days.
Yeah, but the last couple of years has only been 9 movies.
Oh yeah, 9. Well, either way, I think it has a chance for that if it picks up some momentum upon expansion. I think it has a chance, but I would say acting, I think Saoirse Ronan certainly...
Wait for John Travolta to mispronounce her name at the Oscars.
Yeah.
So Saoirse Ronan.
Xerxes.
I almost thought it was Southeast because that's how it's fucking spelled.
That's how
Sour
it's
East.
Sour
Actually,
East.
the actor I really liked in the movie, who I thought really, I loved his character. The American boy that she falls in love with is played by Emery Cohen, and he plays an Italian, Tony Fiorello. He's a plumber. He's a Brooklyn plumber. So yeah, he's basically Super Mario.
You can't get no more Italian in Brooklyn than a plumber.
He's a Brooklyn plumber, and but the way his character is written, he's a Brooklyn plumber who has kind of a thing for Irish girls, and at first it feels like he's a little bit of a creeper, and but it turns out he's just kind of a little bit of a socially awkward dude, and you know how that happens where social awkwardness can appear like creepiness, and it's really just that, and the way it's played
Jesse Eisenberg.
I legitimately felt for the relationship he was building with her, and he seems like a cool dude who in another world you might have been friends with. That's what I like. If the movie really makes you feel empathetic for characters, and his performance really did that. Not to mention, I'll admit it, he's a pretty good looking dude.
All right.
I'd ride that pipe.
I'd unclog his pipes.
That's worse.
He's a member of the Pipe Fitters Union, Local 413.
Yo, you guys want to hear something kind of funny?
Okay.
The way you laughed there is worrying me.
It's kind of funny. Like, is it more?
It's funny to me. I don't know if you'll think it's funny, but all right. My sister was dating this guy who was a pipe fitter, and he was in the Pipe Fitters Union, but one time he showed me and my friends all these like stupid viral videos that like the whole joke of it was just like pipe fitters have big dicks and that was it. Like that was the sole joke of these things he was showing us. He was just cracking up at all of them. I'm like, this isn't funny.
Yeah, actually, it kind of reminds me of.
My point is when I think of pipe fitters, I think of assholes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, actually, I can add on to that, Bill, because when a few years back, when Zach returned from, I think it was when he returned from Peru for the first time, from the Peace Corps. I picked him up from the train station. He had gotten, from the airport to the train station. I picked him from the train, and we were headed down the road to my house for him to stay for the night. And along the way, we passed the Aurora, Illinois Pipe Fitters Union, and we were laughing, Beavis and Butthead style, just dorky kids
Right.
going, pipe fitters. But literally within 100 yards of the Pipe Fitters Union, there was a flashing roadside warning sign that said, "Caution, loose manholes." Loose manholes. And because someone was doing some work in the sewers, and so the manholes were loosened.
You want to fit these pipes?
In your manhole?
Well, you fit your pipe into the loose manhole is what you do.
It's got to be loose, otherwise it's not going in there.
You're not going to get the full load.
Of the product that's in the pipes. What's fitted into the pipes, yeah.
Yeah, smash cut to Captain Lou Albano singing the Super Mario song. Do the Mario!
Do the Mario, swing your hips from side to side. I don't know the rest.
I don't have much else to say about Brooklyn, so I'll move to Spotlight really quick, because I know you haven't seen it yet, Bill A., and I don't want to spoil much for you. That said, granted, this is based on history, so we pretty much already know what happened.
Sure.
Spotlight, the latest movie from Tom McCarthy.
The great director behind The Cobbler.
The Cobbler, yeah, what the fuck? This is his...
Which he is not ashamed of, by the way.
Here's the thing.
What?
Here's the thing. The Cobbler is an anomaly, because every other movie he's directed has been wonderful.
The Cobbler's a lot of fun.
I having recently watched it, I will agree, The Cobbler is ridiculous. But it's not a good movie. But every other movie that McCarthy has directed has been good. So I don't want to harp on that. Spotlight is a solid drama that follows the Boston Roman Catholic priest scandal, and specifically it focuses on an investigative team for the Boston Globe newspaper. The investigative team is called the Spotlight Team, hence the title of the movie. And the Spotlight Team is headed up by Michael Keaton, alongside Rachel McAdams, Mark Ruffalo, and the concept of Spotlight is this is a team of investigative reporters who take their time to build their case, and they're one of the few who they don't really have a set deadline. Their deadline is when they are ready to unveil their investigation. And a lot of newspapers, especially big city newspapers, will have their investigative team. And what happens is a new editor comes into town, and this editor is kind of an outsider, and he suggests that this team follow up on a sex scandal that previously no one really wanted to talk about. And as a result of kind of being prodded into this, they discover more and more truths about the priest sex scandals, and the way there's kind of a system in place amongst the populace, amongst the police, amongst the district attorney's office, and of course in the Catholic Church itself, all focused on concealing the truth behind all of these rape cases and molestation cases. And it's a wonderfully acted story, beautifully directed. My only criticism of the movie is, for some reason, maybe I had the movie built up a little too big in my head from seeing some people talk up the movie, but ultimately,
Corey Coleman.
I actually didn't listen to his review of it.
Oh, really? Yeah, he gushed about it.
I avoided that because I knew he likes to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know, it didn't quite gel with me. Like I didn't get that emotional punch that I felt like I should have gotten. It might also be because I followed this scandal so closely when it originally broke that maybe since I knew most of the major twists in advance, maybe it just felt like confirmation of what I already knew.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, the performances are friggin' great. You have performances from Stanley Tucci, once again. Gotta love the Tooch. Tucci is, in my opinion, the best part of the movie. He plays Mitchell Garabedian, who's the kind of the main attorney in charge of representing a lot of people who've been victimized by these priests. And he's a cantankerous character by nature, really an introvert. He's always too busy to talk to people. You basically have to annoy him to the point where he will give you a couple minutes to speak to him. And the performance is wonderful. I honestly think Tucci has a chance as a supporting actor nom for this. I hope he does, because I really liked it. Michael Keaton, I'm glad he's getting roles in major dramas. He might... There might be a chance for him to get a nom in there, but I don't know. John Slattery, if you're a fan of Mad Men at all, has a good role in the film as an editor. It's a solid character drama that really builds on the impact that this has on a community. Anyone have any questions or any thoughts on it?
No,
Okay.
I want to see it. That's you're making a case for it, because I've been hearing nothing but good about it.
Yeah, I feel like I need to see it again, just because maybe it's the fact that this was the middle film in a 3-film rally that I did at the theaters the other day. But I really do, now that I'm talking about it, I'm feeling like I'm liking it more and more in my mind. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking into. The music is by Howard Shore, and that's actually something that's intriguing, because when I was hearing it, I had seen Brooklyn just before that, and I was thinking, is this the same composer or not? Because the score has a lot of similarities, and it's not because the composer for Brooklyn was Michael Brook.
Score by Shores.
Yeah, but there's a lot of similar. Maybe that was another thing that threw me off, because the scores are both very understated.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I've covered that, those movies really quick, Bill, Arsenault, and I are going to talk Trumbo a little bit.
Who is Trumbo?
Dalton Trumbo was a screenwriter. He kind of came of age in the 1940s and 50s. Trumbo was known for writing a lot of major Hollywood screenplays.
Roman Holiday being one.
Yeah, Roman Holiday being one. He also wrote the screenplay for Spartacus, the screenplay for Exodus.
I've heard of those.
What was that?
I've heard of those. Haven't seen them. I've never heard of Roman Holiday.
Really? That's a surprise. That's like one of the most popular classic films. You know, it's an Audrey Hepburn movie.
Oh, there you go. I don't know shit about her.
And Cary Grant.
He's not in it. That's Gregory Peck.
Oh, Gregory Peck. God damn it. Yeah, sorry. For some reason, Gregory Peck and Cary Grant, like, even though they're nothing alike, like their faces, maybe their voices are totally different.
My ignorance of classic Hollywood amuses me.
Yeah, but so I don't have anything to say to that.
Yeah, but
So anyway, he also wrote one of his last scripts that he wrote that was made into a movie was Papillon.
I've heard of that.
Which is with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman.
I've heard that on this show.
Yeah, I love that fucking movie. I think it's great. But yeah, so with that, the movie starts off in the late 40s, and Trumbo, besides being a screenwriter, he also happened to be a burgeoning communist, and he was definitely wrapped up in the intrigue of the Communist Party. Kind of outspoken in that respect. And,
yeah, he would stick up for labor rights, and he would join strikers, like people who were crew members on film sets, and if they were striking for something, he would join them because he supported, the worker and everything, and that would get him into trouble with like directors and producers who didn't want that kind of trouble on their set.
And Trumbo was a member of a small group of writers, directors, and actors. Also included in this group was Edward G. Robinson, for example, of very liberal-minded people who would do that. And unfortunately, they just happened to be around at the time when anti-communist sentiment has reached fever pitch in the United States. And people like John Wayne and gossip columnist Hedda Hopper and a lot of other actors sort of formed a united front against communists in Hollywood.
They basically formed a stupid association of like the motion picture American Liberation Front. I don't know, some weird stupid name that actually got them an office in with a name on it and everything. It wasn't just some name for their group. It was also an actual office that John Wayne had, and their job was to not only promote American values, but to weed out those that they felt were against their interests, specifically American values, but also if they just didn't like you, they would just call you a communist anyways.
Right.
So that's kind of what this was about. Was this blacklist thing? It wasn't just to weed out communists. That was kind of like the on the surface issue. What it really was to get rid of those that were causing problems or perceived problems for higher ups, or if you just had a petty issue with someone, you could just call them a communist, and that would take care of it.
And it's worth noting that during this time period, there was a lot of Red Scare movies that were made.
Yeah.
John Wayne made movies like Big Jim McLean, and Guilty of Treason was a film that came out at that time. There's the most famous movie. This wasn't a John Wayne movie, but there was a movie called I Married a Communist.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they don't mention this, but some other actors who were uh, threatened by the blacklist, although never actually blacklisted, Charlie Chaplin, Orson Welles,
Yeah.
they both went through it. So
They
the
just they
movie,
just they just left America. they're
yeah.
like they're like fuck this. We're just going to Europe.
So the movie kind of focuses on that time period, and during the time period of the Hollywood blacklist, Trumbo, amongst a few other friends, screenwriters, were indicted for contempt of Congress and were sentenced to jail.
Well,
And
first they were actually asked to provide testimony to a committee in the Senate, and they of course were smug about it. They were like, "Well, you asked me if I'm a communist. Well, I would ask you if you are a da-da-da," or whatever. They basically just playing up the fact that this is all ridiculous, and that is what led them to being in contempt of Congress. That's what led them to being put into prison for bullshit reasons.
Mhm.
And when they get out, they find they have no work because no one will hire them because they've been blacklisted.
And Dalton Trumbo came up with this idea to publicly embarrass the anti-communists. And the plan was quite simple. First of all, he needed work, and a lot of his screenwriter friends who were blacklisted needed work. But they knew that if they tried to write screenplays under their own names, they would never find work. And so he approached some small studios, mostly B-movie studios, and he offered to take basically low pay to basically be a screenwriter for hire, doctoring screenplays, writing screenplays quickly as possible for dirt cheap, and putting a completely made-up name on the screenplays. And the genius behind this move is, first of all, he developed a system where he and his friends could write movies for Hollywood, but at the same time, once in a while, when a good movie sneaks out there, and if you write a screenplay on the quick, but it just happens to be good and gets notoriety, but for some reason no one has any idea who the screenwriter is. Most famously, Trumbo wrote Roman Holiday, or I'm sorry, not Roman Holiday.
The Brave One?
Yes, the film The Brave One under the name Robert Rich, and he won an Academy Award under that name.
But they didn't have anyone to give it to, so that caused kind of a stir. It was like, who the fuck wrote this,
And the rumor mill started fueling, and suddenly a situation formed where all of Hollywood knew that Trumbo and his colleagues were writing scripts, but because they couldn't prove it, it started to erode people's faith in the concept of the blacklist, because all of America loved some of these movies that were coming out, and they didn't give a damn if the person who wrote it was a communist or not. They just wanted to see a good movie. So suddenly, in the late 50s, Trumbo is kind of approached by a couple very prominent filmmakers.
Kirk Douglas and
the
Otto
actor
Preminger.
Kirk Douglas, who's producing Spartacus, which is to be directed by Stanley Kubrick. And then Otto Preminger is going to be making Exodus. And both of them basically say, we want you to make this, to sort of rise out of the B-movie world, make this big-budget screenplay a reality. And both of them hint that we're actually out to give you full credit for this, and we're going to break the blacklist with it. And they did. That's the story behind it. It's sort of a story of triumph by publicly embarrassing the concept of the blacklist. So that brings you up to speed with the history of the situation.
And most of the plot, for the most part.
Yeah, and most of the plot of the movie, too. Now, there's really no need to go into the specifics of the movie because we've pretty much outlined the history behind it.
We'll get into character stuff in a second.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I'll start by going with Bryan Cranston's performance as Trumbo.
Sure.
I would say, for people who do not feel like they want to watch all of Breaking Bad to learn why Bryan Cranston is a great actor,
those people can just go fuck themselves.
You don't need to watch that much of Breaking Bad to see that.
Well, here's what I will say: if you are looking for a 2-hour a 2-hour experience into the amazingness of Bryan Cranston as an actor, his performance as Trumbo is flawless.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say that.
It's an eccentric performance. It's a very theatrical performance.
But Dalton was kind of theatrical and
there was a
eccentric,
documentary also called Trumbo a few years ago, if you saw it, which had a lot of archival footage of him, and he was an eccentric character, and
well,
it required.
just look at his fucking mustache. I mean, like, it's like Gene Shalit, you know.
Yeah,
Gene,
actually, that's an. Here, Bill, I'm going to pull up Dalton Trumbo just so you can get a look at what this dude looked like.
While he does that, I'll quote Gene Shalit's review of The Mummy when he said, "It's great for kids and daddies and mummies too."
Gene Shalit. So yeah, here is Dalton Trumbo doing what he does best: writing in the bathtub.
Oh my goodness, he looks like my Uncle Tom.
Hey, maybe it is your Uncle Tom.
It's not my Uncle Tom.
Yeah, so Trumbo was an eccentric character. He'd said numerous times he got his best writing done in the bathtub, and so that was kind of a big thing for him. And Cranston's performance was kind of the heart and soul of this film.
It was really the strength of the movie. It was all completely held up on his shoulders.
I won't go as far to say that the entire strength of the film fell on his shoulders. I will get into that in a little bit. Maybe that's where we'll have our.
That's probably the contention, yeah.
But what I liked about it was the way he was able to. They were able to play off the eccentricities of his character without turning it into useless melodrama. Some elements of the film that I think could have easily fell into that. There's a subplot in which his family is starting to kind of lose him because he's spending so much time working. And whereas a melodrama would have played this with him breaking down and his family finally coming close to actually leaving him, they kind of move into it in a more realistic way where he realizes what he's doing, and you see that realization hit him in a way that feels natural.
Sure, but I would say there are hints at melodrama. It doesn't go, like you said, it doesn't veer into it completely, but like for example, we see Dalton taking pills to get through these screenplays that he's writing, and I was thinking when watching it, okay, is he going to become a full-blown addict, and he's going to like start taking it out on his family, and then they're going to like have to help him out of it and shit like that?
And that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. They just
hinted at it.
He just kind of hinted at it, and maybe he took the pills throughout the rest of his life. Maybe he ditched them when he was done with them. I don't know, but they never really got into that because it's not really what it was about. What it was about was his relationship with his family, and that was distilled through his relationship with his daughter, Elle Fanning.
Right.
And she gave a pretty good performance. It wasn't, terrible or anything. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was all right. It was tender.
I liked Elle Fanning in the movie. I particularly liked the fact that while she was angry with her father, the layer of it that I appreciated was you can tell. And there's this scene where she even confronts him with it, that she's angry at him because she's seeing more and more of her own personal traits in her father. And it's that fear that a teenager has of, being too much like their dad or something, and coming to terms with whether they think that's a good thing or not.
Sure.
That's a natural phenomenon that occurs with a lot of people. And so I liked that. Some other performances I really liked. I think Louis C.K. had a surprisingly intriguing turn, a dramatic turn, as the screenwriter Arlen Hurd.
Huh.
His character is struggling with illness for a long time, and he contends with Trumbo because he's sort of. It's intriguing in that he's at first reluctant to join Trumbo's group, but at the same time,
He's compelled.
He's compelled to, because, like him or not, which he doesn't particularly like him all that much, he does feel politically akin to him. He agrees with a lot of his politics, and you watch as the two kind of clash with each other. That's sort of another subplot in the film is Louis C.K. Trying to keep Trumbo. At one point, he accuses Trumbo of going too far into the capitalistic route, and there's this kind of funny moment where he joins Trumbo's group, but he writes a screenplay and he adds some not so subtle communist material into a screenplay, and the studio head who reads the screenplay, played by John Goodman, gets pissed off at it.
That was my second favorite performance of the movie was John Goodman.
Yeah, John Goodman's character is, I would argue, for me, Bill, the single best scene in any movie this year.
Was it when he busts up with the guy with the bat and
yes.
He just starts breaking the windows?
John Goodman's baseball bat scene in this movie is so far my 2015 pick for best single scene in a movie. It was so satisfying.
Well, to kind of describe it to Bully on, it's basically John Goodman plays this sort of sleazy B-movie producer, studio head, who's got like a cheap little office, probably above an apartment or below an apartment. You know,
are there any sly references to Matinee?
Actually, there was a lot of that involved in it. The name of his character is Frank King, and I did a little bit of research on it. He was a film producer of a company that was called King Brothers Productions, and King Brothers Productions did a lot of low-budget films that were
aliens coming to Earth, taking women's clothes off, crazy shit like that.
Yeah, stuff that you would expect of like he was sort of an early Roger Corman kind of figure.
Yeah. Well, anyway, in this scene, okay, the one of the lawyers, I guess, he's not really an actor or a screenwriter or anything, but one of the people involved with John Wayne's group, who basically go around threatening to blacklist people, comes to John Goodman's office to fucking threaten him. And he's kind of like this Weasley little guy,
I mentioned offhand earlier in the movie that prior to getting into film production, he was like, he owned a company that manufactured like ping pong tables or something like that.
Something like that, yeah, something silly,
But you get the feeling that John Goodman is someone who was born without money, and he's a self-made man, and kind of rough around the edges.
He's probably not going to take anyone's bullshit either, which is exactly what happens. This Weasley little guy, he's like, oh yeah, well maybe we'll just bring about questions if he's like, if you hire Dalton Trumbo to write your screenplays, maybe we'll just say you're a communist or something. And then John Goodman pulls out a fucking baseball bat. It might as well be from The Natural.
Mm-hmm.
With what's his face, Robert Redford, and the Wonder Bat, yeah, and he starts like beating his table with it and threatening the guy with it, and he's like, you think you're gonna take this shit away from me? Now, my audiences don't read.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm in it for the pussy and for the money and this and that. You think you're gonna take this? You try to take this shit away from me, I'll fuck you up.
Yeah, I think his line is something like, "I didn't get into this stuff for politics. I got into it for money and pussy."
He breaks his own goddamn window and everything. The guy runs out screaming like, ah,
What does he beat up the car with in Big Lebowski? Is it also a baseball bat?
I think it was
Isn't
a
it a golf
crowbar.
club?
Or a golf club. Maybe a golf club or a crowbar, one of those two.
Oh, you know what? I think it was a crowbar.
But immediately following this, Dalton Trumbo comes into the office, and John Goodman is on an adrenaline high. He's just like pumped, And Dalton Trumbo comes in with a screenplay, and John Goodman says, "The fuck do you want?" Something like that. But he's smiling. He's like, "The fuck do you want?" He's like, "I have a screenplay for you.
Yeah.
And here's a secret. It's damn good." And it's the brave one. And
no, how the line actually goes is he brings in the script, and John Goodman looks at it and says, "What is this?" And what happens is Trumbo kind of insinuates that there's a problem with it, and Goodman's partner says,
Oh yeah.
what is it, expensive?
Is it
And then
expensive?
Trumbo says, worse. It's good.
It's good. Yeah. Yeah, that was probably my favorite scene in the whole movie was that.
Yeah, regardless of what you feel about the movie as a whole, that scene, I don't think I've seen a better single moment in any movie this year. It was
that was really good.
It was almost orgasmically satisfying. It's just such a such a wonderful release of a scene. You felt vindication. If you're at all a fan of John Goodman, it is John Goodman at his John Goodmanest.
Okay.
Yeah, it really is a good
like
scene.
the first season of Treme good.
Oh yeah.
Not first season of Roseanne good.
I thought he was good in Roseanne. He was.
Oh yeah, I'm not.
The problem was with Roseanne, because it was network television. There was only so far he could go with it.
Oh right, yeah. He couldn't just go full blown. Yeah.
I mean, that's why Raising Arizona is so amazing, because it's just balls to the wall, nailed to the floor. John Goodman is on a rage high. Mm-hmm. And he does rage better. I mean, same thing with John Goodman and Barton Fink.
Yeah.
Running down a burning hallway screaming.
His short appearance in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where he kills the frog and beats the shit out of
George Clooney.
And Tim Blake Nelson, yeah.
Yeah, same thing. This is... I know, Bill, that you felt the movie overall was left a little bit in the dramatic part.
No, I thought it was overly dramatic. I didn't think it was melodramatic. I just thought it was... I thought the movie... It wasn't up its own ass, but it was, I felt, a little too self-important.
It was up somebody's ass.
Well, I don't want to be too mean about it.
I will say, no one will ever accuse this movie of being unbiased politically. It clearly has a pro-liberal agenda. Which,
I got nothing against that aspect.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a liberal, so I can't say I have any problem.
Even as just a film critic, I got no problem with that because it's from Trumbo's perspective, and on top of that, The Blacklist was a travesty. So even if you're not a liberal, you should feel that this was wrong.
Right.
And ultimately, it's about a guy's right to work and to speak his mind. It's not really about a guy's political beliefs necessarily. Mm-hmm. But I felt like at least the first part of the movie was very much a little too important to itself and a little too righteous, for its own good.
I would say, I mean, yeah,
I saw it as a group of white people, just arguing over white people problems. I didn't really see it as. I know that's essentially The Blacklist, but what really happened in history and everything.
The irony of it being called The Blacklist.
Well, that wasn't what I was getting at, but I got you.
Well, to be fair, Hollywood at this time was as white as it ever would be.
Yes, it was pretty damn, they didn't really they got into that a little bit, towards the end when Elle Fanning was fighting for equality, for civil rights, and she was joining up with some African-American protesters and everything. So there was a little bit of that going on, and certainly Trumbo was probably supportive of that stuff, but it was, I don't know, maybe I was reading too much into it, but it just felt like it was almost Oscar bait. You know what I mean?
I think it begins to an extent feeling that way, but I think it earns its. I think it earns its stripes by the end.
Certainly, the second half is better than the first half, I would say.
One thing I particularly enjoyed was the arc that Edward G. Robinson, played by Michael Stuhlbarg.
That was good, yeah.
That was an interesting arc. Edward G. Robinson was a famous Hollywood liberal, and he was very much like Trumbo. He was accused of being a communist. The difference was G. Robinson made the unfortunate mistake, which apparently he regretted to the day he died, of going before Congress and rejecting outright all of his friends and naming names, naming known communists. And it was a moment of self. He did it because he essentially was promised that he would start getting movie roles again if he did it.
Yeah, by John Wayne.
Yes, he basically sold out, and it was a shameful moment for him. And if you look at Edward G. Robinson in performances following the time when he did that, he looks more and more haggard and gaunt, and he died fairly. I mean, he died like 10 years after that. I think maybe 15 years after that.
Mm-hmm.
And he never really, even though he got more film roles, he never really had another starring role. One would argue that maybe if he had held his ground, he would have earned the respect of his colleagues, especially after weathering the storm of anti-communist sentiment. But that's not what happened. Now, ultimately, Trumbo did give a speech where he essentially forgave Robinson, if not completely, at least partially.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But it was, a moment of embarrassment for him. And Edward G. Robinson was one of the he was one of the more progressive actors of his time. And one would argue, because of his prominence as an actor, had he fought it publicly, he might have been able to move popular sentiment.
Sure.
But he did not make that decision. And John Wayne, of course, at that time was a force of nature. And one thing that they note, and this is completely to his detriment as a human being, John Wayne ruined a lot of lives by publicly outing people as Hollywood communists and essentially leading the way in terms of the Hollywood blacklist. And it ushered in a period of time where all the films were super jingoistic, and you had to be careful how you presented characters, and they became very caricaturish.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I admit I'm a huge fan of old school westerns, and I will watch a John Wayne movie every day. But as a person, he was kind of an asshole. Now, the one thing that I did appreciate in the movie, though, is they did point out that while he was an asshole, he did have a streak of appreciation for his colleagues that was not the same as some others. He had the ability to work with people that he didn't necessarily agree with, to an extent, which is.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Which is better than you can say for Hedda Hopper, who is sort of the main villain of this movie, if there is a villain.
Who straight up calls a studio exec to kike.
Yeah. Which, yeah, Hedda Hopper, if you don't know who she was sort of the template with which modern gossip columns are designed. She also was a heavy propagandist, a big supporter of Joseph McCarthy. It's worth noting that her character is going to appear again in the upcoming Coen Brothers movie, Hail Caesar.
Cool.
I saw the listing in the credits. So if you don't watch this movie, you'll see her character again.
You know what my second favorite scene in this movie was, other than the John Goodman rage bit?
What's that?
It was in the beginning when John Wayne is giving a speech about anti-communism, and Trumbo is handing out pamphlets, and Wayne comes up to him and he's like, "Oh yeah, Pilgrim, you're a communist, aren't you?" And he says some shit, and Trumbo is like, in that speech earlier you mentioned you talked about winning the war, almost as if you were there. He's like, "Now I was a war correspondent. Hedda Hopper's nephew was this guy was that, this guy that, but where were you? You were on a film set." And Wayne was like, "What are you saying, Pilgrim?" And
where I mentioned earlier about Edward G. Robinson's greatest shame being naming names, John Wayne, throughout his life, his greatest shame was never joining the fight during World War II. A lot of his peers, including people like the director John Ford, who definitely was as politically radical to the right as he was, did in fact involve themselves. John Ford filmed a lot of documentary footage in combat.
Yeah.
And John Wayne was like, all of his friends would rib him once in a while for the fact that he stayed in the U.S. and made movies like The Sands of Iwo Jima, where he would be the rallying American hero, fighting on the beaches. In reality, he was comfortably at home, getting drunk and partying.
But they would show those movies at like USO shows and shit, and the troops were probably super like yeah about him.
But in reality, he wasn't actually doing. He was doing somewhat of his part, but it wasn't like the real thing.
He didn't do the Jimmy Stewart thing and actually pilot missions over fucking Europe, where I don't know if you know this, but Jimmy Stewart rose to the rank of colonel in the National Guard, I think National Air Guard or something like that.
Yeah.
He did his fucking part as a soldier.
Now,
and he didn't have to do that.
You don't have to be a soldier to do your part, obviously, but the point Trumbo was trying to make in the movie was that John Wayne was using the victory against the Axis powers almost as if he personally had a part in that, when really he was just in America filming movies.
Right.
So, I mean, he was like upplaying his role. Yeah, I won it myself, single-handedly, when really he's just some asshole who made some movies. You know?
The thing is, he was one of the few Hollywood actors who really, I mean, the closest he got to a battlefield was behind the camera. He didn't really involve himself as much as he probably should have, and that was a long-term shame of his. And that's one thing they point out in Trumbo where he approaches him about it. Apparently, Wayne, as far forward in the 70s, people were known to approach him and basically, make fun of him openly for doing that. And he was known to get to the point of violence with people if they fucked with him on it.
Well, I mean, you can't argue with it. I mean, it's true. You fucking didn't fight, yet you play up this persona that you did. Mm-hmm. It's one thing if you didn't go and you didn't play up the persona, because it's like, okay, he just kind of did some rallying in support. That's fine. But
while I'm at it, I do want to give credit where it's due to the actor who plays John Wayne in this movie, David James Elliott.
Yeah.
It's an unforgiving kind of role to be given to play one of the most iconic actors of all time. And I think he did it as good as you could possibly do.
Mm-hmm. As possibly do. I mean, I keep saying Pilgrim. He didn't say Pilgrim.
Yeah, he never says Pilgrim, but you're.
but he was kind of trying to impersonate the voice without being an impersonation.
Right.
He was doing his best with what he had.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
And John Wayne also had this iconic face that, while the actor approximates it to an extent, you're never going to make that face like anywhere near.
I mean, he's got like a square-jawed look to him, but
you can even tell there's a little bit of prosthetic enhancing his.
What are you trying to say, Pilgrim?
Yeah. Well, my favorite line is that of Full Metal Jacket. Not until you eat the peanuts out of my shit.
He was in Full Metal. I don't think he was in Full Metal.
Matthew Modine does an impression of him.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Is that you, John Wayne? Is this me?
Who said that? Oh, fuck Twinkle Toes, motherfucker!
What kind of Twinkle Toe cocksucker? Yeah.
I'll PTO you until you fucking die.
Texas.
What is it? I'll PT you till your ass is sucking buttermilk or something like that.
Suck a golf ball through a garden hose.
Did your parents have children that lived?
Oh, wait. Okay, so like the golf ball through a garden hose line is pretty famous, but right before that he goes, "Do you suck dicks?"
Are you a Peter Puffer?
Did your parents have children that live? I bet they regret that. You're so damn ugly, you could be a modern art masterpiece.
How tall are you? 5'9". 5'9". I didn't know they stacked shit that high.
The fact that he made all that up, like none of that was written, right?
No, that was improvised.
The story behind it is hilarious because originally he was hired to just be a consultant, and Ernie actively lobbied for the role. He basically came up to Kubrick offhand and just went off on him doing a line of that stuff. And Kubrick just asked him, would you be able to repeat that? And he said, it's kind of like poetry. You just, you
Just
get a
riff,
rhythm
yeah.
going and you riff.
And at one point during one of the first takes, he mentioned a reach around, and Kubrick had to stop. Kubrick had to stop shooting and asked Ermi, "What's a reach around?"
Oh, Lord.
That's true. He actually asked him that shit.
Yeah.
And after he found out, he laughed his ass off. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is. I rewatched Full Metal Jacket about a month and a half ago, and goddamn, that movie just never gets. And the thing that's, a lot of people say that Full Metal Jacket doesn't work after the second half. I disagree. I think, if anything, the second half it is essential for the first half to work because it comments upon everything that their characters have experienced in training.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant in that respect. I don't know how we got off on a Full Metal Jacket tangent.
We were talking about John Wayne, and then
Yeah.
But if we want to
Military shit.
Yeah, if we want to bring it back to Trumbo real quick, Otto Preminger, he was one of my favorite characters in this movie.
Another set of good scenes. Preminger was a notoriously eccentric personality, known for his domineering nature. And what essentially happens, Bill, and you'll like this, is that when Otto Preminger approaches Trumbo to write his script for Exodus, Preminger essentially moves in with him.
And Trumbo's like, his wife asked Trumbo, did you accept the offer? And he's like, I think I'm going to have to in order to get him to leave.
And if you've never seen Otto Preminger, he was this tall, weird, goofy-looking German man who...
He played Mr. Freeze. That's why I know what he looks like.
Yeah, imagine that guy, Bill, walked into your house, handed you a script, and said, you will be writing this with me. And then he proceeds to sit down on, he goes into your bedroom, sits down, pulls out a typewriter, gives it to you, and just starts staring. What would you do?
I guess I would start writing. I mean, I don't know. He might have the money to back it up.
Gives the distinct impression that he's not going fucking anywhere until you write that goddamn script.
But what's funny is after Trumbo finishes the first draft, and Otto Preminger looks at most of the scenes and he's like, "This isn't brilliant. Write it again." And Trumbo's like, he says something about writing brilliantly and everything, and and then Preminger says, "I'll tell you what. You write every scene brilliantly, and I'll direct unevenly."
Yeah. What Trumbo says is that if every scene in this movie is brilliant and brilliantly written, it's going to be kind of a dull script. And so Preminger vows that he will direct unevenly to compensate.
And of course, Trumbo likes that. He's like, "Oh, okay, touche."
The actor who plays him is a German actor, Christian Berkel. I have not seen him in anything to my knowledge. I guess he
did good. He did good.
Oh, you know what? He had a role in Inglourious Bastards. What was he in that?
I don't know.
Well, obviously he's German, so he's one of the Nazis.
Yeah, I don't think he was was he one of the first ones that the bear Jew killed, or
maybe I'm looking it up right now because that intrigues me. It was a great his Preminger was like flawless. So
what about Kirk Douglas in this movie? That guy. That felt more like an impersonation.
It felt like an impersonation, but honestly, by the time you see him in the Spartacus uniform, I was buying into it.
He looked like him a little bit. Yeah, they actually, what they did was they blended him, the actor that plays Kirk Douglas, into the role of that Kirk Douglas played in Spartacus, into the actual footage when they're showing it to him in like some little screening room, and that's when he makes the decision. Put Trumbo's name on the credits, and his lawyer's like, no, we can't do that, and he's like, shut the fuck up, I'm Spartacus.
If I have any criticism about the Spartacus elements in the movie, I would have loved to have seen at least a brief moment where they comment upon the fact that screenplay has some very overt homoeroticism put into it that in the 50s went over everyone's head.
Yeah.
But if you watch it now, you're like, wow, this is like...
I remember watching it in middle school in class. We watched it in class, and even I was like, what the hell's going on here? There's some weird shit happening in this movie, and it's not my imagination, is it?
Bill Leon, have you seen Spartacus?
No.
Oh,
right.
you got to.
It's
It's not just a great movie. It's also got, like we said, a lot of homoeroticism in it, and it's not very subtle. It's
there's
pretty.
a scene in the movie where this Roman general uh, is in a he's in a
Oysters and
bathhouse.
clams.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's in a bathhouse and he's talking to his slave, and he's telling his slave that he needs oysters and clams, and his slave is giving him a rub down, and
He starts asking him his preference. Do you like oysters or do you like clams?
mhm.
And what he's really asking him is, do you like dicks or do you like vaginas? And that's what he's really asking him. And the guy responds, like, hey, whatever, I'm a slave, I'll do whatever,
He basically insinuates that he will do whatever he's commanded to do for his master.
And so they don't show it, but it's heavily implied that they're going to have sex at some point. So that's basically that scene. And I remember watching it.
I'm looking for the quote right now just to.
Yeah. I remember watching it in, I think it was 7th grade, maybe it was 8th grade, and I don't think anyone else in the class understood what the hell was going on. I knew what he was talking about. I was like, oh.
All right,
Are we supposed to be watching
here's the
this?
line. This is literally the first quotation that comes up on IMDb when you look up Spartacus quotes.
Right.
So the Roman general is Marcus Licinius Crassus, and his slave is Antoninus. So Crassus says, "Do you eat oysters?" "When I have them, master." "Do you eat snails?" "No, master." "Do you consider the eating of oysters to be moral and the eating of snails to be immoral?" "No, master." "Of course not. It's all a matter of taste, isn't it?" "Yes, master." "And taste is not the same as appetite. Therefore, not a question of morals. It could be argued so, master." "My robe, Antoninus. My taste includes both snails and oysters."
Oh, snails. It wasn't clams, yeah. Something like that. Yes. But you get what he's getting at. He's not talking about food,
Now you have to picture during this conversation he's being rubbed down by his slave. So
it's even worse. It's like even like
oh yeah. Yeah, that is like
But at the same time, that's a great scene to
oh,
write.
absolutely. It's a brilliantly written scene. The dialogue is very sharp. Who would have thought that sort of subtle metaphor could be thrown in there? And it just shows an example of Dalton Trumbo as kind of a ballsy writer, in that he was because Trumbo was an intelligent person. He wrote that scene intentionally.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing, and he knew that it would go over the heads of most people. But the smart people would look at it and be like, "All right, so we know where Crassus stands. He's looking for some snails and a little bit of oyster on the side."
Right.
Even an unintelligent person should be able to figure out that there's something up in this scene. I mean, because it wasn't just what they were saying; it was the massage. It was also the atmosphere. Like, it was very sweaty scene. There was a lot of fog. It was a bathhouse.
Mm-hmm.
They were half naked. They're two men. They're talking like this. It's like, do you prefer snails or oysters? Like, this motherfucker's not talking about food.
You have to remember, though, the 1950s was the time when they had men's magazines that were meant for men to read articles with dudes drawn all doing tough things, and I'm a manly man, and these were sold under the auspices of a manly magazine for manly men, and
of course, young boys experimenting, they would take a look at them and go, what?
Yeah, oiled bodies and shit like that.
It reminds me of almost when pornographers would try to get away with a porno where they would actually have to insert an educational bit in their sex scene, because they couldn't show the porno or sell it without it having an educational bit. For a little while in the 70s, they had to actually put some sort of lecture in there. So it's almost like they were selling sex in the 50s, but they were selling it almost like, be a man,
Yeah, here, I actually just found an awesome example. There was a magazine called Man's Life.
Oh,
Here's
God.
Yeah, let me see if I can find.
There's probably an article in there. Steaks and cigars. Which one do you prefer?
I think we're getting a little carried away here.
No, all I see is fucking magazine. Hang on.
Okay, here's an example for you, Bill. This is the 1950s for you. This is Man's Life magazine, and the name of this article that this is based on is Weasels Rip My Flesh.
Oh, like the Frank Zappa album.
Yeah, the Zappa album that would come out like 15 years later, but this is like from the 50s, and Weasels Rip My Flesh. It's a drawing of an article about this guy fighting off a bunch of killer weasels.
That sounds comical.
But do you notice how fucking cut this dude is, and how, yeah, there's no way this was meant for anything other than very closeted men.
He looks like David Bowie.
Albuquerque. Remember he fights weasels in Albuquerque?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
So do we want to move on?
Speaking of big buff dudes, Luke Cage is in Jessica Jones.
Yes.
He is buff as fuck in that. Yeah, he really is.
Now, how far have you made it in, Bill A?
I finished it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
All right, so we all have a place to talk about this. Why don't you start, Bill Leon? I know you've been aching to get a word in.
Not really. In fact, now that I'm done with it, like I don't even know where to start because it's like, okay,
well, start wherever you want.
The first 3 episodes were kind of frustrating. I was really picking up some like corny vibes, and just like they weren't selling me on the noir. They weren't really selling me on Jessica Jones' character. I wasn't a big fan of Kristen Ritter's performance in the start.
One thing I find fascinating is the show was advertised and sold under the auspices of being like modern, like noir kind of fiction, and yet after those first like 3 episodes, it kind of abandons that conceit.
I would argue the ending, like the kind of pan out shot from the ending, that's trying so hard to be noir.
Of the last episode?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right?
To an extent, it sort of starts to wrap itself up into it again, but it really doesn't go for noir as much as I was expecting.
The theme song sequence, there's some times where, like, as I'm binge watching it, I'm like, I know you have to put it at the beginning of the episode, but it's just weird having it between this cliffhanger ending of darkness where I'm like, you're going to pick that up with, I don't know. It's just weird having the theme song in there.
It's worth noting, Bill, that if you binge watch on the Netflix app on my TV and you switch to the next episode, it cuts out the opening title sequence. So it's like watching it as like one long fucking 13-hour movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which I did not watch it in one sitting. It took me 2 days. And I did sit through 10 episodes in one night, though.
Nice.
That was a rough night.
I did that about today because I started on 4 or 5 I started on.
Yeah, so you went quite a bit. So overall, I'll throw out my opinion on Jessica Jones. I thought that it's more uneven than Daredevil as a story. I think it does kind of struggle with direction on where to go, but the themes that it covers are really fascinating, and I have to give it credit. The entire plot of this first season is a metaphor for a woman struggling to overcome an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wrapped within a superhero metaphor, and that's what I really liked about it is that it dealt with this heavy theme. It deals with things such as abuse, rape, domestic violence, while making it an entertaining, dramatic, and to some extent light comedic atmosphere.
There were a few times where the comedy they would throw like a jokey line in the middle of like a serious conversation. I'm like, why are they doing this?
Or they would just do something completely weird, like comedically, like the couple upstairs who's actually brother and sister.
Right. That became they kind of shot themselves in the foot with that because it was like they didn't know what to do with it after they introduced it.
So they just killed the boy off. Spoilers.
Yeah, when he first appears, my reaction to that was, wow, so we have a McPoyle family. living
Right.
upstairs.
That's essentially what it was. It was really weird. I was like, is this comic relief? I was like, why do they need this kind of comic relief?
It was really a red
crazy,
herring.
a crazy redhead and a kid wearing a diaper? I was like, what? This is confusing.
I appreciate that they were going into such disturbing territory, but they didn't explore it very well.
They didn't really get into whether or not this was incest, which I don't think there was. I think it was just an odd relationship between a brother and a sister, like where she was like a weird parent type figure.
I don't know. Because
I
there's
would
some
rather-
lines. There were a few lines in there that
There were a few lines, but this was a very socially awkward brother and sister combo, so perhaps they didn't know what to say.
Did they have any business being in this series?
Not really.
Not really, no.
No.
They didn't. If anything, they stalled it a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jessica had to deal with it a couple times, and I was like, Jessica has better shit to do.
yeah. It felt
Yeah.
like a needless thread that was thrown in to lengthen the series to 13 episodes, basically. I think this arc could have been a solid 10 episodes. It felt a little stretched out for me.
I think it was around episode 10. I thought it was about to end. I was like, all right, it's over. And then I look at the thing. It's like 4 episodes left. I was like, what the fuck?
I agree. I felt that feeling of...
Well, this was kind of like Daredevil. This was like we're in the middle of an origin story, basically. And it's a different kind of origin story. It's not the kind where you see how they got their powers, although we do kind of see that. It's more about the origin of them becoming a hero.
right.
Daredevil starts off with him being like a vigilante, and then it progresses and he learns how to be a superhero. Jessica Jones, she does not really want to be a hero. She just wants to get paid for private investigating and stuff like that. But then she kind of learns that she is capable of doing the right thing, and she's strong enough, and blah, blah, blah. And then it ends with people asking her for help. And she's like, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can combine the two, and that's how she becomes a hero herself. And all the while doing the business of handling personal demons, like, for example, Kilgrave, which is the main example. And I kind of liked how this and Daredevil did do the flashbacks. Like, the first episode, you're almost completely out of it. You're watching it, and you're like, what's going on? Like, why is she following Luke Cage? There was no real introduction to that. She was just following him. But then the next episode they reveal, or the next couple episodes, they reveal why she was following him.
And really, they don't even give you the full story behind that until very late in the series. And that's something that I appreciated. I like the way that they unfolded a little bit at a time. It felt a little repetitive that they introduced Kilgrave the same basic way that that Kingpin was introduced in Daredevil, where you only see like elements of him until episode 3, and then you see.
Oh, you mean like that, like visually?
See, that's part. The first 3 episodes or so. Like, I wasn't entirely sold on the series until David Tennant was actually on screen.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. I honestly felt the same way about Daredevil. What made Daredevil work completely for me was Vincent D'Onofrio's amazing fucking villain performance, and it's almost become a thing where because I would agree, David Tennant in Jessica Jones really ties everything together. These 2 series really pivot on the villain, on the strength.
Well, I would say Daredevil. Well, I don't know about pivoting. But yeah, I guess you could say that. But I would say Daredevil was more about the, I guess, the comparison, the contrast between hero and villain, and who's stronger and who's more stronger-willed, that kind of thing. Jessica Jones, it's very clear that Kilgrave is a bad guy without much redemption.
That's true. Well, it's interesting. They start that way, and then they kind of introduce the possibility of reform to it.
They toy with you a few times.
They toy with you with that, but it's not an arc. It's not a big thing they deal with.
And to be fair, I never felt like that was ever going to legitimately happen.
Right. Like, this guy is just totally white privilege, childish, and he's just going to do whatever the fuck he wants to do because that's all he knows. You know?
Maybe if instead of having that subplot involving the McPoyle twins, if instead they expanded on his, quote, redemption subplot and maybe had an arc of 2 or 3 episodes where his character was becoming increasingly reformed in appearance, but maybe with some subtle hints. That
if they didn't kill him, that would work.
Yeah.
Well, no, I agree. Killing him was a good decision, actually.
I don't have a problem with them killing him, but I said before we started the broadcast, I was like, if they're going to do a second season of this, they're totally fucked.
No, I don't think they are. There's a lot of things you can. They hinted at a lot of different characters, like for example Simpson and that subplot. There's a whole other organization out there, and of these weird adrenaline fueled soldiers, and so there's more to this.
Not to mention the alien Chinese mafia from Daredevil, who
who'll probably pop up in Iron Fist or Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling Doctor Strange is going to deal with that a little bit. Possibly Iron Fist, or the second season of Daredevil will get into it just a little bit, because they hinted at it in the Stick episode. You know, like at the end where Stick is like the war is coming. You know,
and I have no doubt that Simpson is going to appear in Daredevil because I actually did a little reading on the character. Simpson is based on a Marvel character called Nuke. And Nuke is apparently at there's an entire arc where he is Daredevil's nemesis for a few issues. So I think that's something that's going to be tied into the next season.
They might do that in season 2, like just to bring it in there. It's
the one thing I'm curious with is Nuke is famous for having a tattoo of the American flag on his face. I'm curious how they're going to write that in. That's a very eccentric.
Well, okay, so
element.
Did you notice the pills he takes are red, white, and blue?
Yes.
Yeah.
They better put a fucking flag on this guy's face because that's what I need in my life is a psycho on steroids with a flag on his face.
And I love the conceit of the different pills where, the red is what he takes when he needs to get into action, the blues even him out, and the whites bring him down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really fascinating. And it's interesting, when I did some reading up on Nuke as a character, there's some question as to whether the pills are actually effective or if they're placebos and he's actually just an adrenaline junkie who needs a trigger to set him off. Which I think is fascinating. Wouldn't that be a great plot twist if it turns out those pills have nothing to do with it, and it's just all built on...
Well, yeah, but how does it explain Trish?
It doesn't, and so I don't think they're going to do that, but it would be interesting if that's something they tried to explore.
Do we want to talk about the element of heavy sex in this show, or...
Honestly, I think some of the sex scenes were pretty pointless and not... I think they were put in there just because they could have them.
No, I don't think it was gratuitous. I think it was...
I think just having so many of them became a problem for me because...
There were just a couple. There really weren't that many.
There had to be a sex scene with her and Luke Cage breaking the bed. That makes sense. When they realized that they couldn't break each other, and then they decided to fuck like a beast. That was, that made sense.
She rode the shit out of him, man. I mean, that was like, you need to applaud that. I was like, holy shit, yeah, that's great.
I don't care about that.
I know, it's not that big of a deal, I know, but still. It was
I know what you're saying, but it's just, I don't know.
It wasn't doing anything other than having sex, but it wasn't gratuitous, I don't think. It wasn't exploitative. You
have to have at least a sex scene or two to consummate the fact that these two have a budding relationship, because in the Marvel Universe, they eventually do marry. So, that's something that is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see what they take Luke Cage from here. I mean, he's basically disappeared.
There's one thing.
He's got his own season coming up.
It kind of bothered me, especially with him getting his own series coming up, where the fact that he couldn't break the mind control, and I thought he was going to break the mind control, I'm like, oh, this dunce.
Well, here's the thing. I actually think that's interesting because that's his weakness. His weakness is his mind is not invulnerable because he is basically invulnerable to harm on his skin because his skin is unbreakable. And So
but he's not totally invulnerable. You can get at
and
him.
in fact, what brings him down is when he gets shot in the head, it causes his brain to swell. So not just mentally, but like his actual physical brain is a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
If he's knocked around too much in the head, that can be a problem. Even though it's the thing of when an elevator falls, even if the elevator doesn't break when it hits the ground, you're still going to be broken because of the momentum of that. And imagine your brain is the elevator. So it's getting knocked around. Anyway, so not the best metaphor, but I tried.
That's okay. I really love the sequences that were done in the CDC cage that they had Kilgrave stuck in with the water.
Those are really good, yeah.
That was kind of freaky and really done well. And I thought it was funny. These two shows, Daredevil and Jessica Jones, really show that these heroes are not above torture to get the information they need. Daredevil, you could argue, went through an arc where he kind of learned that maybe torture is not the best way to go. Like, at first he had to strong-arm people. Now it's argued maybe he won't be doing that as much. Possibly. It's still kind of up in the air. Jessica Jones, she don't give a fuck. You know, she hasn't learned not to do that.
She's a classical anti-hero kind of character where she doesn't care if she kills people or anything like that. I
don't think she wants to kill people or anything, but I don't think it's something that'll bug her. She just adds it to the list of things that she has against her. You know, she's like, just put it on the list of things that I have against myself, whatever. You know, it's just another tack on the thing. You know,
the air of self-loathing that she has about herself.
It's great. Yeah, that throughout the whole series, the season, I mean, people are just dumping on her like, you're a piece of shit. You know, and she's just taking it. She's like, yeah, I know, I get it. She's like Bad Santa, Billy Bob Thornton. You know, Billy Bob Thornton. He's like, yeah, I know, I'm a piece of crap, whatever.
Yeah.
One thing I'm kind of, I don't want to say disappointed, but a little bummed out by is just like we're going to be starting Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe soon with Civil War. But so far, Daredevil and Jessica Jones don't have that many ties, not only to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but to each other.
Well, here's my thought, Bill.
They got Claire so far. That's
in one episode, which, and I know I'm not, like, there just need to be more.
Claire and one of the police officers who was in the station episode where they were all pointing guns at each other.
I will tell you how they should have tied this in that last episode. What happened ultimately was that Jessica Jones, like Luke Cage, woke up and joined her for battle, and that honestly, I think that was a little. I would have liked to have seen an 11th hour appearance of Daredevil, even if it was a brief appearance. Just to tie in the fact that he's also there on the streets. Because Hell's Kitchen is only a handful of blocks in New York.
And they better have had him in the black suit, because I wasn't very present when we covered Daredevil, and the recording messed up. I hate Daredevil's Bible Man-looking fucking costume at the end of the series.
I like it. I don't have a problem with it.
It's bulky. It looks like Bible Man painted red.
Hey, I have no problem with that. Bible Man's awesome.
Bible Man looks like he's encased in fucking, like, children's blocks.
Would you prefer if it was the Holy Avenger?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I probably would too.
Hopefully, okay, so my point in bringing that up is when we see Daredevil again, please, I want the suit to look different, because I did not like the way it looks.
They could very well update it. I mean, they establish he now has a relationship with that character who makes the suit. So maybe his suit will get harmed in the first couple episodes or something, and maybe he'll need an updated version of it. You know, that could happen.
So here's my thought with Civil War. When I think about it, Captain America Civil War, there's so much in the Civil War story. I don't think it's all going to take place in the movie Civil War.
Yeah, they can't. There's no way.
I have a theory that Civil War, it's going to be, I hate to say this because this is like immediately going to make people shudder when I say it. It's going to be like the Star Wars Attack of the Clones movie, where the first movie is setting up the war, and then subsequent films are going to fulfill that. And
Like
so
the cartoon series, the Clone Wars
well, now
movie, that kind of stuff.
Then I think you're wrong. Then they're going to use Civil War to launch Infinity War, which
I think what they're going to do is sort of combine themes from both Civil War and Infinity War. My theory is going to be this. Civil War is going to lay the groundwork. Subsequent Marvel Universe movies between then and Infinity War are going to be continuing the conflict of the Civil War. And then Infinity War Part 1 is going to be all about everyone coming back together.
Yeah.
It's going to start with them as divided as they've ever been. And then over the course of that movie, they're going to come back together. Like, that's going to be the climax of the film. And then Infinity War Part 2 is going to be the great battle with Thanos.
Guardians and fucking Defenders and no X-Men, though. No.
And my theory of how they're going to fold the Marvel TV series into it is at some point you're going to have a character Civil War is going to have Peter Parker, Spider-Man in it. That's New York. So who knows? Maybe Peter Parker's going to team up with or run into Daredevil somewhere.
That brings up a question, actually, because Jessica Jones is tied into Spider-Man. I think she eventually works at the Daily Bugle and shit.
Well,
like that.
I think Jessica Jones, she actually, in her backstory, she was in high school with Peter Parker, and she had a crush on him, and was in the same room as him when he got bitten by a spider.
Now that's not going to work for this though, because Peter Parker is a teenager in the
Right, unless she's a teacher, and then that's going to be really awkward. But
oh, that's so fucked up.
Nice. But no, I don't see Peter Parker being.
It would resurrect the puberty metaphor of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't see Spider-Man appearing on television, but I could see a crossover with a television character appearing in a Spider-Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sony's deal with Marvel is that he doesn't appear in television.
Oh, I'm not saying he's going to appear in television. I'm thinking like Daredevil or Jessica Jones or both might show up in the movie.
Yeah. Because that was added to Phase 3, wasn't it? A Spider-Man movie. So they're going to... Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's going to be a Sony Spider-Man movie. I think it's a Sony Marvel Spider-Man movie.
I haven't heard whether that's officially been added or not.
It's really confusing because Spider-Man's going to be in Civil War, and Kevin Feige is going to produce another Spider-Man movie, but they haven't quite said if it's a Phase 3 movie or if it's just a Sony Spider-Man spin-off thing.
I'm going to the most definitive resource possible, Wikipedia. And we're going to find out what the plan is. All right, Cinematic Universe Films.
I don't know if it's going to show up on that page.
Control F Spider-Man.
I think the farthest it comes to is Doctor Strange. But
there is a rumor out there that they're going to drop Iron Fist and not do that.
Actually,
there is a rumor that's going to be Punisher, and they might do a Netflix movie of Iron Fist.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Wikipedia, for your information, has an entire section on the future of the universe. And so after Captain America Civil War and then Doctor Strange, that will be followed by Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in 2017. And then planned for July of 2017 is Untitled Spider-Man film to be directed by John Watts.
Yeah, the guy that did Cop Car.
Cop Car. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he did Cop Car and he did Clown.
Yeah, but that seems like a weird...
It's an odd choice, but, I don't think it's that bad of a choice. I mean, Cop Car and Clown. You remember Clown with the Eli Roth thing? Where, so... And
then in November of 2017, there's going to be 3 Marvel films in 2017. Thor Ragnarok will be November, directed by Taika Waititi.
That's an odd choice.
Yes.
Because he did What We Do in the Shadows, and not that he's a bad filmmaker. I mean, I'm sure the guy can do it. It's just, it's kind of like, what made you think that he could do it?
I think
definitely not Eagle versus Shark.
Well, the key to making Thor movies work, I think, is humor, because it's the most the most pompous and Shakespearean, just like uppity kind of thing, where it's just like, this, God, he's a fucking god. When you're a god, you have to throw in humor for it to be palatable. That's why in Superman 2, there's that great scene where Superman's lost his powers and he's sitting in a bar drinking shot after shot of whiskey.
You mean Superman 4? Or Superman 3?
No, it's Superman 2.
It's not Superman 2 when he does
gives up his powers in the middle of Superman 2.
Yeah, he does, but he doesn't drink in that.
I swear he drinks in 2.
No, it's Superman 3 is when he drinks. But he has his powers in that one. Yes, it's true.
Yes, maybe it happens in both?
Yes, it's true!
Alright, well, fine. Yell at me one more time.
No, I'm saying it because in Superman 2, what happens is he gives up his powers for Lois Lane to have a real life. They go off to that cafe, that little diner place, and he gets the shit beaten out of him by some trucker asshole. And then he makes the decision to go back to the Fortress of Solitude to get his powers back. But he doesn't have a scene where he drinks shots. However, Superman 3, there is a scene in that movie where he drinks shots, and he is at a bar drinking. So,
speaking of DC comics,
Superman drinks whiskey, so it is Superman 3. So you are right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Speaking of DC, I don't know how recently it was. I just saw this on my Facebook feed. Green Lantern Corp is coming, and it says it's going to be an outer space buddy cop film.
I don't know about buddy cop, but
that's what it said in the little blurb.
No, I'm sure it says that. I don't know how well that's going to work, but outer space makes sense. If they treat it like Guardians of the Galaxy, but a little bit more serious, then a Green Lantern Corps movie would work, I think.
By the way, the Green Lantern Corps movie is tentatively listed for 2020.
Yeah, really. Right?
Yeah.
So that's a long-ass ways away. Who knows?
DC's kind of doing it weird, but...
DC's doing it real weird.
Well, here's the thing. I am not convinced that any of these DC Universe movies are going to succeed, because I have yet to see a DC Universe movie since the Batman Nolan films concluded.
Those don't count. And the only one that exists is Man of Steel, so, I mean, there's really nothing to go off of.
And Man of Steel did nothing for me, so until I see Batman vs. Superman or the
Wonder Woman or
Suicide Squad...
Suicide Squad could very well be a good one.
It could be.
It has promise.
David Ayer is the director whose movies are either really good or fucking awful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what you can't say about him is that he's not bold.
He's daring. He's daring. I give him a ton of credit for that, but he also is incredibly inconsistent.
Yeah, it can be a toss-up. So Suicide Squad is a unique one for him. But I think he could pull it off. So we'll see. And Wonder Woman, I'm looking forward to. I think isn't that Patty Jenkins? Or is that it's female director? I think it's Patty Jenkins, but it might be someone else that I'm not that I'm forgetting right now. But I think they're shooting that right now, and of course Zack Snyder's doing the main the main movies.
Yeah, that's the other part, is that Zack Snyder...
I know, people don't like Zack Snyder that much. I don't really have a problem with the guy, except, he used to do the slow-mo, fast-mo thing. Now he's kind of evolved past that, if you want to call it evolution.
He's a very... You know what he is? He actually reminds me a lot of, come to think of it, Ridley Scott, where he's a very visual stylist, but ultimately he doesn't. He has trouble servicing a story within his films.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem that I've always seen with it. And yeah, Patty Jenkins is going to be directing Wonder Woman.
Okay.
So. Wonder Woman.
No, I'm not going to do that.
You know what? I say they do a new Wonder Woman theme and they bring Bonnie Tyler back.
No. Just use Billy Joel's Attila song, Wonder Woman.
No, what it's going to be, since this is a very dark DC universe, it's going to be a death metal band or something that's going to be like...
That would be interesting, but the truth is I'm holding out for a hero till the end of the night.
DC Comics is pleased to announce that Death Clock will be doing the new Wonder Woman.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't you mean Deathlock?
Yeah, the Death Clock
I don't know. Yeah.
from Metalocalypse.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know. Is it Death Lock or Death Clock?
Deathlock is somebody, right? That's
No, Deathlock is that low budget horror movie that
no, that's Bloodlock.
Bloodlock.
Deathlock is a DC or Marvel character. I don't remember which.
Oh, okay.
Oh
Deathlock.
wait, we're thinking of Death.
All right, Deathlock.
Is that the-
Who does Will Smith play in Suicide Squad?
He plays
Deadshot.
Deadshot.
Yeah.
Deathlock might be Marvel then.
Deathlock, I think, is a Marvel character.
All right,
from Agents
Deathlock
of
is a
S.H.I.E.L.D.
Marvel character. Deathlock the Demolisher.
Yeah, he's like a cyborg. He's in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 1.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he's actually it's a pretty cool character.
Mhm.
Deathlock.
Okay, real quick about Jessica Jones and Daredevil.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why are villains in the Marvel films not intimidating?
Yeah, that's interesting. The Marvel films, with the possible exception of Loki being a fairly...
Let's back that up because
I'm not
Robert
gonna say he's
Redford-
intimidating,
Robert
but-
Redford was more intimidating than Loki.
Yeah, I'm not going to say Loki's intimidating per se, but
But Loki though just has to do with who he was up against because it's like,
Loki is cunning.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's exactly. Loki, I think, is a worthy villain. I would say Robert Redford was a worthy villain.
yeah.
The-
Loki had a lot of personality.
Yeah, I mean, Red Skull was underdeveloped, but
Red Skull brought jack fucking shit to the table.
well, I'm not going to say the actor didn't. I'm going to say the script didn't give him a lot to do.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
The actor could have easily brought it if he had a
I
script.
thought Ronan was pretty intimidating, honestly.
He was not. I mean, to me, he was like, we can't use Thanos yet, so let's introduce a character who's kind of like Thanos, but not quite.
He tried. He's all right.
He did
but
a good job.
It works better. It's nothing compelling, really.
Ronan's a stock bad guy. Like,
Yeah.
What about Whiplash? I'm just kidding.
okay, I take it back about Red Skull. Whiplash might be like the most useless.
I want blood. No offense to Mickey Rourke. It's just, come on, you know.
Yeah,
Actually, you know what? The best villain of Iron Man 2 is, not him at all. The best villain of Iron Man 2 by far.
It's Hammer.
Yeah.
It's what's his face? What's the actor's name?
MC Hammer.
No, the actor that plays Hammer. I know
Yes,
what you're talking about.
MC Hammer. Yes,
MC Hammer.
that's who it was. Damn it! Why did I?
He was in Moon. He played the main character in Moon.
I can't remember his fucking name. He's like one of my
Sam-
favorite fucking actors.
Sam-
Rockwell. I almost said Sam Worthington.
Sam Worthington.
Yeah, Sam Rockwell.
It's better than Jai Courtney, who is going to be in
nobody-
Suicide Squad, by the way.
I want to see Sam
Oh.
Worthington and Jai Courtney in a buddy cop movie.
That would be the most boring, dull fucking
in a Green Lantern buddy cop movie.
Green Lantern buddy cop
And
movie.
even better, Sam Worthington and Jai Courtney are buddy cops, and the chief is played by
John, what the fuck's it called? John Carter. What's his name?
Taylor Kitsch.
The other guy
Taylor-
keeps getting cast in movies that don't make money.
yeah.
Taylor
yeah.
Kitsch, yeah.
Taylor Kitsch is the angry chief, and then who else could you throw in that's completely milquetoast?
Jan Michael Vincent.
J. Michael Bruce Willis, because Bruce Willis can be that. He's not
shit.
always that. He can be that.
Liam Hemsworth.
Oh, God.
Liam
shit.
Hemsworth will.
The Twilight Boy, Taylor Lautner.
Oh yeah, Taylor Lautner. Yeah, Liam Hemsworth. Yeah.
They're the rival.
Throw in both of the Hunger Games actors, Josh Hutcherson too. Just
he was
Oh,
slightly
man.
better than Liam Hemsworth.
slightly better. So maybe he'll be the villain.
Josh Hutcherson is all right.
Yeah, but yeah, Liam
He
Hemsworth.
He actually auditioned for Spider-Man, and his audition video is online. I thought he did a pretty good job.
And then what you do is you get it to be you get a director who's like a true hired gun director, like John Singleton, to make the movie.
Or Rob Cohen.
Yeah.
Oh, yo, put Tyler Perry's Alex Cross in the movie.
I hate to say this, but Tyler Perry would probably be one of the better actors in the movie, and I'm not a fan of him, so that's...
You love him now, after Gone Girl.
I didn't really particularly think he was great in Gone Girl. He was okay.
Oh, okay.
But if Zach was here, he would be telling me that I'm wrong. So I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, but Zach would also be taking off his shirt at the same time.
Yeah.
So you know.
Yeah,
that
he's kind of the Taylor Lautner of our group, isn't he?
That kind of undercuts his argument, is when he shows off his nipples.
Yeah, so yeah.
So if we run the course,
You forget I had to go to college with the dude. That was a daily occurrence.
So if we run the course of our...
It was like Bryan Cranston, like in everything he's in, he has to be at least mostly naked.
Oh yeah, remember that scene in Trumbo where he's
in the bathtub? Yes.
No, not in the bathtub, when he's in the prison and they're checking his body for weapons.
Yeah, they're delousing him.
Of course. Well, you know, and they're like, open your mouth, and he opens his mouth in a very old manish way. He's like...
It's not a Bryan Cranston performance if he isn't mostly naked.
Yeah, he was naked. He was fully naked in that scene, and we just didn't see his dick or anything. But he's like pull up your sack, and so he does that.
There's a scene when he's in the bathtub where I swear you can see a little bit of it underneath the water.
Well, I wasn't looking for that, so I can't.
You have to remember, I just finished watching all of Neil Breen's movies, and
God.
I think it's like a stimulus response now that I see someone lying in water, I immediately assume there's going to be a sack.
Neil Breen. You know, it was his birthday recently.
It was.
Birthday,
yeah. When Zach and I both have now seen all three of Neil Breen's officially released films, so we'll talk about that when Zach comes on. That'll be a good special episode.
His new one's coming soon.
So I'll go ahead and wrap things up then and say next week we'll be talking Creed, The Good Dinosaur, and any other big movies coming out that... is anyone here seeing Victor Frankenstein?
That's a no. You know what I mean? Like Jesus Christ. The only thing I took from the trailer of Victor Frankenstein was when... the main character, Victor Frankenstein, played by what's-his-face from Wanted. I can't think of his name right now. James McAvoy. He looks over at this girl and he's like, "And my name is Frankenstein."
He says that?
He says it like that. He says Stein. And I laughed my ass off. I was like, they allowed that? They allowed that in a movie?
I think it's impossible for them to make a good Frankenstein movie again. Like, they already did all the good ones.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think it's still possible. It's just, didn't they do one recently with Benedict Cumberbatch? But it was like a play?
It was Bradley Cooper, I think.
Bradley Cooper. It was wasn't it a Danny Boyle that did a...
Oh, wait, no, Bradley Cooper did Elephant Man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Danny Boyle did like a theatrical thing that was broadcast on Fathom events, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was that.
I was gonna say, what's the movie where the guy travels through time with Frankenstein?
Is that I, Frankenstein or something?
No, I think you're thinking of the TV show Frankenhole.
Oh no, I'm not thinking of that. It's a movie. It has John Hurt in it.
Oh shit! Isn't that like Frankenstein 2000 or something like that?
That might be what it's called. I was going to say they need to make a Frankenstein movie that gets weird again, but like, didn't they kind of do that already with I, Frankenstein, and that was terrible?
Yeah, but I didn't see it, but Hawk Ripjaw definitely talked about it. Oh no, Bill, it was Frankenstein Unbound.
Unbound. Yeah.
Yeah, with also Raul Julia.
Ooh.
I'm pretty sure.
It was Roger Corman's last directed film. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it is. It was his last movie he directed to date.
It's fucking weird. This guy goes back in time and meets not only Victor Frankenstein, but the author Mary Shelley.
Which makes no sense.
Makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense, and I mean, I don't know, but the one thing that I can say is, unless it's supposed to be, I don't know, it's Roger Corman, so whatever. So we will see you next week.
Okay.
Signing off.
See you
rather
later.
abruptly.
Anus.